At 38, they stopped asking her when she would get married, not because they suddenly understood her, but because they had already decided her story. She was no longer next. She had become the exception. The one people looked at and quietly said, "Something must be wrong." She noticed it in small ways. The way conversations changed when she walked into the room. The way her name was followed by a sigh. The way people said, "You're still young." But their eyes said something else entirely. It didn't start at 38. It started much earlier. At 25. "When will you settle down?" At 30. "You shouldn't wait too long." At 35. "Be careful. Time is going." And somewhere in between all those warnings, she started to feel like she was running out of something she never fully understood. Time, love, or approval. Family gatherings became quieter for her. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything felt like a reminder. The aunties who smiled too hard, the friends who stopped inviting her to certain conversations, the subtle comparisons. She's doing well, but. That but carried weight. No one insulted her directly. No one needed to. It was in the silence, in the glances, in the questions that were no longer asked. Because the truth was, they had stopped expecting anything different from her, and that hurt more than pressure. Some nights, she questioned everything. Did I miss my chance? Was I too focused on building myself? Did I do something wrong? Because when the world repeats something long enough, it starts to sound like truth. She watched others live the life she was told to want. Marriage, children, pictures that looked like completion. And for a moment, she wondered if she had failed some invisible test. But one day, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. She was sitting alone, scrolling through another perfect life online, when a simple thought interrupted her. What if I'm not behind? It didn't feel powerful at first. It felt unfamiliar. What if I'm not late, but just on a different path? For the first time, she didn't argue with that thought. She let it sit. She began to see something clearly. All her life, she had been measuring herself using someone else's timeline, a timeline she never created, a script she never wrote. And suddenly, it didn't make sense anymore. Why should her life follow a pattern that never considered her dreams, her pace, her truth? That was the day she stopped explaining herself. So when they asked, "Why are you still single?" she no longer rushed to justify. She no longer softened her choices to make others comfortable. She simply said, "I'm building a life that makes sense to me." And for the first time, she meant it. Something changed after that. Not in the world, but in her. The pressure didn't disappear. The whispers didn't stop, but they lost their power. Because she was no longer trying to prove anything, not to her family, not to her friends, not to society. She started living differently. She invested in herself. She built her career. She created peace in her own space. And slowly, she became someone she was proud of. Here's what no one tells you. There is no universal timeline. There is no single version of success. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with choosing a different path. The world fears what it doesn't understand. That's why it labels. That's why it pressures. That's why it questions. But your life was never meant to be understood by everyone. At 38, she wasn't behind. She wasn't late. She wasn't missing out. She was becoming. And maybe the real courage in life is not following the timeline you were given, but having the strength to create your own.